Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Jodi Dancers Talks. Today we have Taimour from Expert by Experience with us. Hi Taimour.
Hiya.
Hey, both.
So I want to get straight into it, and we noticed your page for a little while now, and there was a lot of content that popped up and caught our attention. But before we start talking about your Instagram page, I want to talk about you as a person. So your mental health journey, do you mind sharing that with us to start off with?
Yeah, sure. So before I started Expert by Experience around 2014, I finished university, got my first full-time job. And in the first 2 or 3 months of getting that job, like my life just got really like hectic. So, I had to get up at like 5 a.m., go to work. There was lots of things going on at home. My nephew was born and he was born really prematurely as well. And then there's other things going on at home in terms of like our landlord telling us he's going to evict our family. So it's just like so many things happen at once that my mental health couldn't necessarily take it anymore. So I developed like severe anxiety, depression, and I developed like a lot of anxiety symptoms that I couldn't necessarily understand. So that made my anxiety even worse because not only did I have to deal with everything going on outside, but then also had to like deal with what's going on inside without knowing what actually was going on, like in any shape or form. So yeah, and like I guess in a way it was a really tough time, but that's when my mental health really came to like a strong area, I guess.
Yeah, and when you talk about anxiety, just for people that probably aren't aware of the symptoms, how did it feel for you? Like when you first experienced anxiety, what did it feel like?
Yeah, so I've been an anxious person all of my life. Like when I was a kid, I would need my parents to reassure me of something 4 or 5 times. I'll be like, say yes. In Urdu, I'll be like, say ha, bolo ha. And I just keep saying it, and they would be like, yes, yes, yes. Like, so I always had that kind of like internal dialogue all the time, internal anxiety. But because everything happened so intensely in 2014, I started to develop really severe symptoms. So I started to develop like neurological symptoms, like I would get tingling, my hand would go numb sometimes, and I'd just be sitting there and it's like, what the hell is going on? I would get lots of tingling and burning sensations all over my body. And that was the first time for me. So it was, as you can imagine, I was quite scared. So yeah, typically these are things I've had in my life, but in 2014 it was like really intense.
Okay, and then before we move on to your page, there's something you said interesting where you said you kept asking your parents, say ha, say yes.
Mm.
Do you think that, especially from a South Asian background, do you think that there's a misunderstanding of mental health between generations?
Yeah, I agree there is to an extent, and not just South Asian communities, but all forms of different communities as well. But in our context, I feel that it would have been right for my parents to had me, go see a therapist or a psychiatrist, etc. But with that being said, they didn't necessarily have that knowledge. And that's not to say it's completely their fault, but part of the fault also comes down to the fact that, the services around mental health aren't necessarily catered to South Asian communities. So how would you know about treating or helping your son if you yourself haven't been educated on it?
Okay, so do you think that there's a sort of a Western influence on mental health so that, like you said, other communities, not necessarily South Asian, but other communities around the world only have one narrative on mental health? Do you think that has an impact on that misunderstanding?
Yeah, to an extent. So, like with South Asian, in the South Asian culture, like I'm speaking based on my experiences, and there is some research around it as well. In South Asian families, we never let a family member down, regardless they may have like schizophrenia, bipolar, etc. The family will be there to be able to provide them with support. But I feel like because we keep it so, in the house, the model itself, I think we just need that just one or two steps further to be able to get like professional help, which I think will fit in really well with the community model that we have, which is being there for the people who need you most.
And I like your what you said there about the community feel. So obviously you've got
Mm.
individualism, but then you've got community. And let's say like second or third generation children of immigrants tend to have that sort of conflict between individualism and community. But I think
Mm.
it's interesting what you said there. Do you think that the community sense helps people with mental health?
100%. So like, And I feel like the reason I had that tough year in 2014 was because I became so individual, right? I left university. I was literally all about me, me, me. I need my money. I need to get to my job. I need to climb up the corporate ladder. It's all about me. And I lost that sense of community that I had, right? I wasn't going to like meeting my friends as much. I wasn't hanging out with my family as much because I was just so busy. And I didn't have this sense of belonging to the South Asian like culture as a community that I belong to. So I feel like a big part of why that happened was because I became so like me, me, me. And it's important to have that sense of me in this world, because who's going to look after you? Yourself. But when it becomes too extreme, which is what I feel like happens in capitalism now, if once you lose community, you're going to lose a lot of yourself that you wish you didn't.
And I think what you said there is interesting, because a lot of mental health issues, especially for, like I said, second or third generation children of immigrants, comes between that conflict of I need to succeed for myself, but also at what point do I not lose sense of the community, which is interesting. And then
Mm.
I want to move on with your journey. So you said in 2014 is when your mental health issues really took
Mm.
force in your life. What did you do then to overcome those problems, those issues? What did you do?
So I did like very immediate things, right? So I quit my full-time job, which I got straight after uni, which to a lot of people was like, "What are you doing?" As especially with students as well. Like, not everyone gets a full-time job straight
Yeah.
away. But I quit that because I just didn't feel right. And I did like other things, but none of those were like medically based, right? I just took steps in my life. I needed to look after myself. But I'm not gonna lie, that experience took away 2 years from me. I didn't have a normal steady job for 2 years after that. And so like I did those steps to look after me, but as a result, because I wasn't able to hold down the job, or I didn't feel confident anymore. So now that I had like financial anxiety over that. So it's like, it was like one door closes, another door opens, but that door in itself also has its challenges where you still have anxiety. It's just, it's a really good saying, like, it's like same-ish, different day kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it felt like that.
Yeah, and I think what we're beginning to see is a pattern in terms of mental health problems, or mental health is everyone has mental health, so issues
Mm.
can arise at different points, and like you said, anxiety and depression can take different forms. And again, so obviously you quit your job, and then obviously you faced other issues. But I noticed something interesting on your page where you said you were trying to publish in South Asian publications.
Yeah, yeah. So like, like 2 years before I had my mental health like episode, was, I've been in online publication for a long time. I came up with Media Diversified, which was an amazing publication. And through that, I was able to get like, I was able to get a really good understanding of how to run a publication, an online publication. So I always had my own dreams of wanting to start my own publication. And so, initially, like with everything going on in my life, I didn't really have space, time, but also I didn't have a purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I generally like, I mean it when I say expert by experience wouldn't exist had I not gone through what I went through in 2014.
And I think it's fitting of your name, expert by experience, because we'll touch on it in a moment, but the name in itself suggests that you don't have to be a medical professional to
Mm.
say, I've had mental health problems or I need help. You don't necessarily have to have some sort of qualification to state issues like that. So I want to come back to the origins of the name now, expert by
Mm.
experience. I know there's a story that you want to share about this. So how did that name come about?
Yeah, it's a funny one. It's something I would never have come up with myself. But I was in Birmingham speaking on a panel, and they, like the panel had like esteemed guests. So like, professors, academics, people like therapists, psychiatrists. So when it came to time for me to go up and do my speech about my mental health journey, they're like, yeah, we've got Taimour now. And Taimour, he isn't really an academic. He's not a therapist. He's not really anything like concrete. He's just an expert by experience. And the minute I heard that, just my not alarm bells, but like my spider
Yeah.
sense kicked in, and I was like, I need to do something about this. And like it was important for me to give that period meaning. Like I couldn't have gone through all that suffering. It has to mean something. And I've become a firm believer now in life. Like, life is life. the universe keeps moving regardless of how you may behave. So good things will happen and bad things may happen. I think it's about being at peace with that. And if bad things happen, then you have to use those experiences to make something good out of your life.
And then touching back then, so it was very recent in terms of time frame, about 2-3 years. So I think it was
Mm.
2019, if I'm not mistaken, is when you started fully setting up Expert by Experience.
Yeah.
Do you think then that all your, let's say, experiences with mental health helped bring you out of that sort of you're in? So like from 2014 up till about 2019, you're having these issues with anxiety. Do you think those issues then helped you propel yourself out of that? Does that, if that makes sense?
Yeah. And that is even the case until now, right? So like in lockdown, so my partner is immunocompromised. He has multiple sclerosis. So that means we barely leave the house. We only leave the house to go for walks. And being able to do the work I do from my home, helping people in our communities, keeps me motivated. It keeps me going, and it keeps my mental health balance, like my mental well-being, on a really, really good scale. Um, yeah, so not only was I able to provide myself meaning through experience and the things I've done, but even in the present, it keeps me. I don't want to say happy because I think that's the wrong word, and I don't have the right word for this yet. But it keeps me balanced. I think balance is the right word for now.
And how have you found your mental health during lockdown? Because obviously you've mentioned it. How have you find lockdown has affected it, or has it not?
Mm. At first, it was like a lot to adjust to because now that I think about it, before lockdown, life was just so busy. I don't even know. I would have like dinner at 10 p.m. and stuff like that. And Saturday and Sunday would just go like that. So I deeply appreciate what lockdown has meant for me and my partner in the sense that we're actually at home together,
Yeah.
having dinner together. But there was a time where I had to adjust. But now, even though it feels like it's dragging on, it's been a year. But generally speaking, I'm grateful for the time I'm able to cultivate a life at home. In
Yeah.
capitalism, you never really get to be able to have time at home. You're just like, get up, go to work, come back from work. If you're not coming back home from work, you're going to the gym or you're doing something. And life is just constantly like hamster on the wheel, just
Mm.
forward, forward, forward. So I've been grateful in that regard.
No, and it's good. And I think what your page especially is showing is in terms of sorry, in terms of representation. So like we said, there's different narratives on mental health which don't usually get
Mm.
shared. But I think what Expert by Experience does really well for me personally, from what I've seen, especially from your Instagram page, it's not just the professionalism in which you deal with this issue, mental health, so it's quite broad, but it's
Mm.
the different voices you have, especially from the South Asian community. Do you think that there's a lack of representation in mainstream media about mental
Yeah,
health?
I agree completely. So this is like I'll talk about why I started Expert by Experience, like another reason, right? So when I was with Media Diversified, they would really encourage us to go and pitch to mainstream publications like The Guardian, The New Statesman, The Telegraph, and whatnot. And I remember I wrote an article on colorism, and I pitched it to one of these publications. Can't say the name for legal reasons. Um, and they came back to me and said, "Oh, sorry, Taimour, we can't really publish this because we published an article about this a month ago."
Mm.
And that made me so salty because it was like, imagine 10 South Asian people want to write about colorism, but these folks only have space for 1 out of 10. So whenever I wanted to start Expert by Experience or any kind of publication, I was like, all those 10 people will need to be represented in the mainstream or whatever is happening.
Mm.
Because, and I agree with you completely in the sense that they have such a narrow, like, it's a very competitive space. They will only platform or publish like this much amount of people when there's like this many people who can talk about a subject.
Yeah.
Um, so it is very narrow. It is very, there isn't any kind of like, there isn't any kind of critique of like race, gender, sexual identity. It's just like quickly get someone on, doesn't matter who it is. Just make sure they won't offend the people watching and just get them to talk about. And what really frustrates me is the people who they get on to talk about mental health will be the people who will just diss the communities. They won't go a step deeper to try and understand why we don't want to go to the NHS, why we don't want to go to a therapist. They'll be like, oh yes, South Asian people don't go to therapy. Why? It's 60 quid for a session. How many South Asian people can afford that, right? Um, so it frustrates me, and you can tell I get like proper wound up about it. But what they do is they just get like these, it's important to platform everyone, but what they do, they just focus on like a select few people who will just come in and say, yeah, South Asian community is unprogressive when it comes to mental health, not realizing that we do so much in terms of community work for mental health and stuff like that. Just because we're not looking at it from a Western lens doesn't mean that doesn't exist.
No, and I think what we've learned today from your own experiences, Taimour, is you've had your own experiences with mental health, but then you've sort of platformed in a positive way to sort of give voice to people's views who are just as relevant as, let's say, the experts, or just as relevant as people in the media today. And I think what you do is your platform is covering that middle space that no one's touched on yet. And I really think people should check out your page, because the work you are doing is really amazing.
That means a lot. No, that means a lot. It's I think just one thing I would just say is like, so I speak to Shunji on Stalaki a lot, and our dream is to work up to the point where we're not needed, so we can like make, in an ideal world, you wouldn't need expert by experience in Stalaki because the service sector would provide for South Asian people on the level that we're doing it, but even more because they have the financial resources, they have the labor power, etc. So we're covering the middle ground up till, and I know it won't be in my lifetime, but up till we come up to the point where we are not needed.
But I think, like we said, like with yourselves, Expert by Experience Therapy, you're in a much needed space at the minute to provide that platform. And I think the service that you're doing to the community, not the individual, the community, is extremely important. And on that note, I want everyone that's watching this video, please check out Expert by Experience on Instagram, check out the website, please like and share so more people can get access to this service. And Taimour, I want to thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.